Happy New Year, my faithful listeners. You know, the grapevines may be dormant this time of year, but activities still surround vines and wine. Let's find out what's going on with our first trip in 2020 on the Wine Road.
You know, the situation, the location, it's just you couldn't ask for a better setting. This old Craftsman home is over 100 years old and just fantastic views out the back. We're really fortunate.
I've been pruning since 1971, and these guys are essentially saying, or the way I heard it, was everything you're doing is wrong, and everything you're doing is hurting the vines.
He's the esteemed winemaker who helped launch Twomey in Calistoga and Russian River Valley in Northern California, spent 22 years at Silver Oak Cellars. He had the rare opportunity to experience a year-long resident internship at Chateau Petrus in Bordeaux and became GM at their Dominus location in Napa Valley. Daniel Barron will be on today's show with Molly Hodgins of Napa Valley College, talking a little bit about the school's Viticulture and Winery Technology program and a recent 3-session pruning school with world-renowned vine master pruners Simonette and Cirque. One topic we'll touch upon, why you see people in the vineyards in the dead of winter. They're coming up later in the podcast. Outside Healdsburg in Dry Creek Valley, Sonoma County, just before you get to the Dry Creek store, is Zoe Wines. They've been there less than 2 years, and not only is it a winery and a vineyard, a wine tasting facility, but also a beautifully remodeled Craftsman home that is available for overnight stays. I'll tell you what, if you're coming to the area, be sure to look them up as an option. I had intended to see Zoe Wines for some time now, and they had an industry party back in December, so that gave me the opportunity to experience this beautiful place and meet the owner and winemaker, one and the same, David Eckert. I was happy to finally spend some time at Zoe.
Yeah, thanks. It was great having you, and I'm real excited to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing here at Zoe Wines. Being the new kid on the block, we're eager to get the word out and tell people about some of the great things we're doing here.
There's plenty to talk about, too, because there are a number of compelling aspects to your winery and tasting spaces, plural. So why don't we start with the name Zoe and your brand mascot, an elephant.
Yeah, so the name Zoe comes from my time living in Japan. My wife and I are starting the business out here, and we thought long and hard about a logo, kind of a mascot, and a name that was simple to remember. And we became very fond of elephants back when we were engaged in Thailand, when I was living in Asia. And we kind of adopted elephants as kind of our mascot. And Zoe in Japanese is elephant. So the name of the winery, Zoe Wines, came about many, many years ago when we've kind of concocted the whole idea of starting a winery. And Zoe was a real kind of simple 2-letter word, comes at the end of the alphabet. It's pronounced almost the same way anybody looks at it, and so we really thought it would be a great brand name, and it's a visual image as well.
And it's nice that you have the connection to your interest in the animal.
Yeah, I think elephants, in many cultures, the elephant is a good luck charm. In India, it's for prosperity. In Japan, for farmers, it's one of the animals that they would worship to kind of hope for good harvests. And so it kind of made a great connection. And the word Zoe and elephant really, it's part of our mission as well, is supporting sustainability, and we think this is a great animal and a great symbol of kind of the earth, and so we want to protect the earth, and so a portion of our proceeds all goes towards elephant sustainability, and that's part of our mission statement.
Yeah, don't you have 2 or 3 different recipients for your donations?
Yeah, we have a program called 111, so 1% of our time goes to local community charities. So it's our team's time, and they bring us ideas of areas they want to invest in locally. 1% goes towards elephant sustainability. We are working with a organization called Save Elephants out of Thailand. And we just recently joined the 1% for the Planet organization, which helps us direct funds towards broader issues, sustainability, and kind of saving the planet.
Wow. That's respectable. That's nice of you to do that. Anyone who can give back, especially using the proceeds from their business, is just fantastic.
Well, I really wanted in this phase of my life to start a business, to do something that I really wanted to do, to make a product, to kind of entertain people, to introduce Sonoma and this wonderful place here on Dry Creek. But I also wanted to be able to give back and wanted to be able to do some philanthropic activities, and using the business as a way to do that was really important to me in this phase of my life.
And the fact that you have an elephant as your mascot or symbol by no means that your wines are big.
No, actually, in some respects, a lot of our wines are quite elegant and have a lot of finesse. Not to say that elephants can't be finesseful, but yeah, I think we're very much into moderate alcohol, very well-balanced, fruit kind of forward, but food-friendly wines. Really looking to express, the vineyards that we work in. A lot of our wines are estate-grown. The vintage, so we're really trying to demonstrate what happened that year and let the vintage express itself through the wines. And of course, being true to the variety. We want to not concoct something, but really let the wine express itself based on where it came from, the time, and the actual variety itself. So that's our philosophy as it relates to winemaking.
And you're not just the owner, you're the winemaker too. Now, did you tell me last week that you were a home winemaker as well?
Yeah, I started kind of in the garage, or actually in the kitchen in San Francisco. I was living in the marina when I moved to San Francisco from Singapore, and started making wine in the kitchen in my apartment in the marina. Grew out of that rapidly and moved out to Marin and started doing garage winemaking, and that was back in 2001, and so here we are, fast forward about 15 years, we launched the business. So I had a lot of practice, a lot of different varieties, a lot of mistakes, and felt I was ready for the big leagues, and launched in 2016.
Well, you must have been fairly young when you changed career paths.
I had turned 50 and thought, it was time to, try something new. I come from a background in finance. I worked in New York City with a couple of different banks, and they, gave me the opportunity to live all around the world. So lived in Japan, Singapore, I lived in South Korea. I had a chance to live in London as well as the Netherlands, and but spent kind of most of my career in New York City. Finally having the opportunity to come out here on the West Coast for a small stint, and that's when I fell in love with kind of the winemaking process, and concocted the dream to buy a vineyard out here and come out and start a business.
And a nice calmer environment out here.
Much different than New York City, but I must say the excitement of starting a business was anything but calm. So, stories like not having power when the harvest started in our first year, PG&E just hadn't been able to deliver the power we needed to run our equipment, and partly an oversight on my part. I didn't realize I needed a different type of three-phase power, so these are the things you learn. But winemaking is problem-solving, and boy, we had plenty of problems. Someone was trying to tell me something, do I really want to do this? And they threw a lot of curveballs at me at the beginning, but we made it through and continue to this day enjoying what Mother Nature throws at us.
Well, you're hitting it out of the park right now, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Thanks. It's nice to see some of the accolades come in from all this hard work, and it's great to see the business starting to really take off.
As you pass by the sign of Zoe Wines on Dry Creek Road, it's hard to imagine what's going on beyond the gravel parking lot. It's quite a property that features many appealing aspects. I asked how he was able to snag such a great location that features a gorgeous, centuries-old Craftsman home.
I was pretty lucky. I'd been looking for many years and from New York, and was traveling out here and happened upon a property that wasn't on the market yet, and that's the vineyard out back here, the estate vineyard. So I bought that in 2012 and was kind of commuting back and forth from New York City, selling the grapes and making a little bit of home wine in those first few years, just to get familiar with what the land had to offer here. And then the property where we currently have our inn, our farm stay inn for overnight accommodations, and the tasting room, and where we built our little boutique winery, Came on the market in 16, and it just worked out that I was able to put in an offer. It was a fixer-upper. We had to tear the entire foundation down. We had to lift the house 6 feet off the ground, completely redo everything, interior and exterior. There wasn't a winery here. There was a permit, so we had to build a winery from scratch and get everything up and running. And that was quite a year of getting everything up. But the situation, the location, it's just you couldn't ask for a better setting. This old Craftsman home is over 100 years old, and just fantastic views out the back. Once we built the deck and kind of got rid of the hedges in the back and opened up the views, it's just transformed the place. So we're really fortunate.
Yeah, all of your work is just shining here because it is a stunning place and so historic looking. You did a nice job of bringing it back to life.
Yeah, we tried to maintain what it was, but make it functional and safe and to last, for another 100 years. So we're real excited the way it turned out.
Why don't you delve in a little deeper about the tasting spaces you have here on the property and some of the experiences you offer your guests?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we have kind of a home-like experience. We have a dining room setting where people can sit and have a wine experience. We have this beautiful Japanese-inspired redwood pagoda that's outdoors that can seat up to 15 people and has a beautiful centerpiece with a fire pit. Over time, we're going to be creating a little kitchen out in that area where we're going to add some food to our experiences. We've got a great deck out back that has perfect views of the vineyards and the kind of the range of the mountains in the background. We have a little lounge for more intimate tastings. And we have a couple picnic tables situated throughout the grounds, which allows people to kind of have a little private area to bring a lunch and have a snack and maybe take a bottle of wine with them, buy a bottle of wine and enjoy it. And our wine experiences in all these areas are sit-down affairs, and we're offering 3 right now that are really unique. One's an aroma workshop where we use smelling kits that have lots of different aromas that are the basis of a lot of the wines that we make. And we help our guests really kind of make a connection between the things that they're sensing in the glass or in the kit and connecting those words and memories of where these aromas are and helping them identify them in the wines. Mm-hmm. We do a blind tasting, which kind of removes the sight element of wine evaluation and challenges people to really use their other senses to try to guess what's in the glass, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Tyler likes to stump his guests with that.
Oh, yeah, he loves to throw people off, and the best is when somebody thinks a red wine is a white wine or vice versa, and these black glasses that we use really make it impossible to see what's in your glass, and that's a lot of fun. And then we're working on 2 new experiences. One is kind of a wine trivia experience. And here it's more of a relaxed kind of game environment where we have, cards with questions, and it helps really to kind of get a lot of energy around the table, people kind of sharing information, trying to compete against each other around who knows the most about wine and wine trivia. And it's been a lot of fun. It's fun to see how people get engaged and competitive when they're sitting around the table sharing a glass of wine.
And a perfect activity if you have, and I'm sure you have groups come here and stay, 4 or 6 people staying in your 3 rooms. So how fun for them to sit around the table here and play that one evening.
Yeah, even if they're just here spending the night, we have games here that people can share, and a lot of people enjoy. When they're out here in wine country, why not focus on wine and have some fun in the process and maybe learn a few things along the way.
Guests also get a bottle of your Zinfandel, too.
Yeah, we each room, so we have 3 one-bedroom rooms here in the inn here, and each one of them are individually rentable or can be combined up. We encourage people to come and stay here and do a wine tasting while they're spending the night, and also each room comes equipped with a bottle of wine.
Nice. He's David Eckert of Zoe Wines in Dry Creek Valley. As you can tell, he likes offering the home environment to his guests, and he explained how that came about.
When I first ventured up here back in the 80s, I was really taken by how open and accessible the winemakers were at the time. I remember one of my first experiences was out with Charlie Meeker and Molly up at Meeker in their teepee. So their tasting room was a teepee in their yard, and that really just got me interested in having a place that kind of harkens back to that era where you would sit down at the winemaker's table in the kitchen, open a bottle of wine, and really feel like you're at home with the winemaker, and not have these flashy, kind of new, ritzy tasting rooms, but more of a home environment. And that's kind of the place that I want to be, and it's the place that I want to host people, and it's the kind of experience that I want to share with others, to kind of share that experience that I had when I first came out here to Dry Creek and was taken by how beautiful the place is and how amazing and friendly the people are.
Yeah. And so, yes, you have a couple of personnel here working in the tasting rooms and doing pourings, but you also might jump in and help out at a time where they might just see you wandering around and doing your work.
Well, if they let me, they like to keep me out of the tasting room. I'm not the greatest pourer in the world, but I love being engaged. It's meant to be an accessible place where the tastings are not belly up to the bar. It's a sit down, and it's a very relaxed environment. It's for a prolonged period, usually 60 to 90 minutes. And because we're a farm stay, we have another one of our missions is education. So everything we do is trying to help kind of educate the consumer, to help them understand a little bit more about wine, to make it a little more accessible and relaxed. And so a lot of our tastings have an educational component to it. And to me, that's another reason that I do this, is I want to not only share this place, but I want to share some of the knowledge and some of the experiences that I've had in kind of growing up with wine.
Yeah, the inn is really nice, and they can get a pretty good idea what the rooms look like on your website. So if you're looking for a nice getaway, this is a perfect location, especially for those of you listening outside of the area. Talking about your vineyard, when you first purchased it, it was primarily Zinfandel and Petit Syrah, but you've added 13 other varieties since that initial purchase.
Yeah, we love the Zinfandel and the Petit Syrah. It's fantastic, and this is Zinfandel land in Dry Creek. But I couldn't help myself. I wanted to create a winery that gives its club members. We do offer club memberships, and that club membership gives people accessibility to our wines. And I wanted to be a place that can provide people with a large variety of different wines and exposure maybe to some wines that they've never had, and maybe challenge them to think differently about some of the varieties that either they've either kind of walked away from or have never really experienced. So, yeah, we have about 5 or 6 different whites that we're doing, and a lot of different reds, a lot of Spanish varieties, a couple Italian varieties, and we're really excited to see just what this super fertile land here can produce. And we're excited about the winemaking challenge of having so many different products and what that can mean in terms of blends and new products that we can invent here.
Well, I really enjoyed your Pinot, the Zinfandel, and particularly the Carignan. So those were very tasty. So I look forward to your other ones.
Yeah, I think the Carignan's something special. Our first Carignan we ever made won the Best of Class from the San Francisco Chronicle. The Chardonnay that we did in our first year won the Harvest Fair Best of Class for Chardonnay in Sonoma for the higher price point. And our Zinfandel's getting accolades. Just got an award from the Somalia Choice Awards for Zinfandel Variety of the Year, and that's all from our first year. So I'm feeling pretty good that we don't need to zero in on only one wine. We can do more than one thing well, and I'm excited about the possibilities.
Not bad for an old garagiste.
Well, I think I had a lot of help. I would have to call out Daniel Barron was our wine consultant, and he did a fantastic job of helping shape my vision and help make it a reality, and also keep a little bit of the guardrails on to make sure I wasn't going off the tracks. But he was a big inspiration and also a huge help in terms of making this reality.
Did you catch that name he mentioned? Daniel Barron? Yes, the same Daniel Barron who is my guest in the second part of this podcast. I was not aware they knew each other, and yet interviewed both the same week. What a crazy coincidence.
Yeah, it's that was not planned, so just a coincidence.
I was thinking since
this is such a relaxing and soul invigorating place, and you had that inspired visit to Thailand, then maybe you should call your Zinfandel the Zo Zen Zin.
Well, that's an excellent idea. I had a nickname back at my original company, and they called me the Zen Master. So part of that was just because I was pretty mellow, pretty relaxed guy. Being in New York, but kind of had that California vibe going. So the Zen Zin, I like it.
Well, how could you turn down a tasting or even a night or two at the Farm Stay Inn with the Zen Master or Zin Master? I truly did enjoy the few wines I tasted and highly suggest planning a visit to Zo Wines in Dry Creek Valley, Sonoma County. Get more details at zowines.com. Up next, we'll head over to Napa Valley to learn a little bit about pruning. Yes, with Daniel Barron and Molly Hodgins. On the Wine Road continues next. And now it's time for Wine Uncorked. Here's a thought-provoking reason why we love wine so much. Can you believe the flavor of wine engages more of our brain than any other human behavior? The studies of Yale neuroscientist Gordon Shepherd show it takes less brain power to hit a baseball and solve a complex math problem. Apparently, the simple act of sipping wine involves a multifaceted interplay, as the molecules in wine stimulate thousands of taste and odor receptors, sending a flavor signal to the brain that triggers massive cognitive computation, involving pattern recognition, memory, value judgment, emotion, and of course, pleasure. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? As you may or may not be aware, this podcast features interviews from my radio show, which airs in Sonoma County and Napa Valley. Back in December, I promoted a 3-session pruning school occurring at the Napa Valley College, 2 winter courses in January and 1 spring course in April. Simonette and Cirque Vinemaster pruners were involved, as well as the college's VWT instructor, Molly Hodgins, and Napa and Sonoma County winemaker and viticulturalist, Daniel Barron. That opportunity has passed, but I wanted to include it in the podcast since it ties in with other details about the Napa Valley College Viticulture and Winery Technology program. It's a very good school and an option you may want to consider if you've thought about that vocation. I'll start with Daniel, and as you heard at the beginning of the podcast, he's had quite a career in the wine industry.
Yeah, it's been a great ride, and one of the things I think that's pertinent to our discussion today is I've never stopped learning, and that's one of the things that keeps me interested, keeps me going in the wine business. There's always something different, something new, some way to expand your knowledge.
You seem to have held a number of titles, too, over the years.
Yeah. At Dominus, I rose to general manager. I found that, I went to Silver Oak to succeed Justin Meyer. He said he wanted to retire and play his banjo more. And I wanted to get back into production more than into sales and marketing side of things, and administrative side of things, and that's where my joy is.
Yeah, it's funny to see the winemakers who grow to managerial levels and then they regret getting to that point because they're not in the winery anymore, and now they're doing paperwork and dealing with HR and such.
Yes, exactly. And there is the Peter principle is real. So I realized that my training really wasn't in administration and managing finances. I wanted to get back to the nuts and bolts of things. Still managing people, which I really enjoy, and inspiring people, and the leadership side, I think, is something that I took great pleasure in, certainly in the end of my career at Silver Oak.
Right. And Molly, you're the Viticulture and Winery Technology instructor here at Napa Valley College, where we are today. You've worked in a number of wineries in Oregon and California, and have been here since 2016. Both you and Daniel went to UC Davis. And how does this program compare to Davis? I know that's a much larger school, and it just seems to me that this would be more of a program for getting students onto the fast track.
Yes, I would say this is definitely more of a fast track. It's an associate's degree, so something that you can do in 2 years if you're motivated. And I guess the difference would be, Davis is a bachelor's program when you get a bachelor's of science, or as I did, a master's of science. And it focuses very much on the science of grape growing and winemaking, a lot of the why we do things, and not a little bit less heavy on the how we do things. And in this program, it focuses on both, right? So we have science requirements. We go into the technical reasons for doing things, but also spend more time on the how it's actually done, with the why as well.
I have to tell you, when I was talking to Daniel about promoting the pruning school, this program that's coming up, he was very interested in bringing you in on the interview. So he certainly respects what you do here.
Yeah, this is a fantastic program, and I have many students who come in from various parts of the industry who are just looking to advance their careers, or who are going through a career change, and then also students who have grown up in Napa or the area, been exposed to the industry here, and decided that this is what they want to do, and this is the path they'd like to take. So.
Yeah, Dan, this 3-course training, along with Simonette and Cirque, the Vine Master Pruners, you were saying it's beneficial to a lot of people in various parts of the industry.
Yes, certainly, Jeff. I think that, and I imagine most of the people you interview on your show are talking about wine, but anyone you talk to about wine will tell you that the base of the pyramid is the vineyard. And the base of the vineyard pyramid, after planting, I think you'd agree, Molly, it's pruning. Pruning is the first act of the growing season, and it's how you shape the vines and how you shape the crop level and the exposure in the vineyard. So on that level, it's very important. And I also think one of the things I'm captivated with Simonette and Cirque and their approach is not just the pruning, but how they impart the information to the pruning crew and how they ennoble the act of pruning and the whole involvement that the workers have in the vineyard, and let them know how important it is to the future and the foundation of production.
Tell me again the people who will benefit from this program. Molly, you mentioned that, I think it was you that said, a family member who gets into the industry behind their parent knows a lot about it because they've had hands-on training, but they may not know everything they should know.
Yes. Well, a lot of that is people who are, working in either in the vineyard, either as techs, kind of checking things, or actually as field workers. They know the how, but not quite understanding the what's the background for this. Why are we pulling leaves in July? Why would we bother with that? Or what is the reason for pruning in this manner versus this manner? And what's the difference? And basically how these changes can affect production, quality, and things like that. And I think it's a great program for a lot of reasons, but I also get really good feedback from people who have taken the classes and are working in the industry, so that's great.
Getting back to the 3-day pruning school, which started a few weeks ago. If you live near vineyards, you may wonder why you see people working on the vines this time of year while they're dormant.
Well, Molly and I don't wonder, but
You're talking to the listener right now.
Okay. Yeah, so as I said, the growing season begins with pruning. I'll never forget a winery up in Anderson Valley that had the winemaker pruned, and he started the day after Thanksgiving and he finished the day before bud break. So it's our winter work, and once the leaves fall, which we need a frost and a little bit of wind, in Napa we usually start the day after New Year's. The crews come back and we'll do our orientation and get started with pruning.
Tell me a little bit more about Simonette and Cirque. You work with them as a consultant, but they are a worldwide company.
Yeah, so a lot of us in Napa first heard about them in 2016. They'd been here, I think they were brought into Anderson Valley by Roederer in 2014. And they did a presentation at a vintage conference summarizing the 2015 vintage, so in January of 2016. And I remember my head hurting afterwards because I've been pruning since 1971, and these guys are essentially saying, or the way I heard it, was everything you're doing is wrong, and everything you're doing is hurting the vines. So I kind of dug deep. I was about to retire from Silver Oak. It was my last year at Silver Oak, and I talked to my successor, Nate Weiss, and said, these guys look good. Maybe you should bring them in for 2017. So as a consultant still at Silver Oak, I worked with them in 2017, 2018, 2019, and then I found out they were doing a diploma at the University of Bordeaux. And since I spoke French, I went back to the University of Bordeaux and got a diploma there in this type of pruning. Wow. But back to your question, Jeff. So Marco Simonet was hired about 35 years ago by a visionary winemaker in Friuli named Schiopetto because his vines were dying. And he noted that vineyards didn't last 50, 60 years like they used to. They lasted 15 or 20 years. Why were vineyards dying? Primarily Sauvignon Blanc. And he gave Marco permission to go in with a chainsaw and just start cutting vines up. Dissecting them, if you will, longitudinally, and looking at the impact of pruning wounds. And Marco started to think and to do research and came up with these ideas that also had been, there were people who'd done it 100 years ago, but the ideas never really took root. There was a pamphlet from 1924 in the Charente, in the Cognac region. And he came up with these ideas and started applying them, and lo and behold, the vineyard started to last longer. And it's based, so the pruning that most of us have been taught to do is, I would describe as a geometric pruning. You kind of put a rectangle around the trellis wire and you say, okay, I want the vine to stay in this rectangle. We take this natural climbing plant and we want to keep it in this geometric area. It's not very good for the plant. What you end up doing is creating a lot of dead wood. And the Simonet method is to create more live wood. And every time you make a cut, there's a wound, a drying cone under the cut. That's how plants work. They're not like animals. They don't regenerate tissue. And those are areas for infection and also less live wood to create resiliency for the vine. So their method is all about creating more live wood and making cuts on younger and younger tissue. That's why a lot of the shaping happens in the spring, or I say some of the shaping happens in the spring. But also training the vineyard workers to think, okay, you're not just making a cut here, you're shaping the future of this plant. And so you're also sending a message to the next person who's going to touch this plant, which is the suckerer, of what direction you're going. And the suckerer is sending a message to the next person who touched the plant a year later, which is the pruner. And so you have this kind of relay race that's going on. And if all of you are thinking the same way and trained the same way, you can create this vine with more living tissue, more resiliency, more consistency, better wine quality, et cetera, et cetera.
As in winemaking, there is a lot of intricate detail that goes into pruning and vineyard management, especially with these new methods provided by the group Simonet and Cirque. Now, these techniques are utilized with vineyards on a vine trellis system. Head-pruned vines, like old vine Zinfandel that stand alone without a trellis, don't have these issues as much because they're not pruned in the same way as trellised vines. I said to Molly, it amazes me the many variations there are in trellising and vine training, of which pruning plays an integral part. I surmise that it's the terroir, particularly the climate and relation to sunshine and wind, that leads to the choices made by vineyard managers.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of the reasons for picking one trellis over another is all about sun exposure, but it's also about fitting, the economics of actual production. If everything was head pruned, there's just not, land values are so high. You have to leave so much space between vines to do that it's not practical on a large scale here, at least here in Napa anymore. So our trellis choices are largely a cross between what's practical, what's best for the climate, the microclimate of the site, and what works on a production level. So everybody is kind of converging on the vertical shoe positioning, not necessarily because that is the best for the climate that we have here, but it's kind of a cross between what works well and produces well and increasingly can be somewhat mechanized. So a lot of the way we prune is based on this vertical positioning, which you can imagine if everything is positioned vertically, it just gives you more space to fit more in, and you're not spreading out horizontally. So that's a lot of the reason we've gone with that. And it's not necessarily here in Napa because that is better for the climate, which can be quite warm depending on where you are, but just because it fits well and it works pretty well.
It's better for the bottom line, too.
Better for the bottom line, definitely. It actually comes down to the lateral fruiting wire space. More lateral space for fruit production is more fruit production on a per acre basis. And if you're training vertically, then you just have more room.
So this is all very technical, and it's very important work you're doing, but is it still the child in you that loves to get out there and get muddy in vineyards, especially like today? You're both wearing your mudder boots.
Oh, yeah. I love pruning. I love being out in the vineyard in all kinds of weather. Luckily, we tend to prune when it's not raining, but yeah, it's actually one of the most fun things to do in the vineyard. And I'm somewhat biased, but I think everybody who prunes really enjoys it. It's a lot of fun.
They're not the kind of people that would work in a cubicle very well, I don't think.
No, at least I've tried that, and it wasn't the right fit. But
that's why Daniel's not in the office anymore. He's back out in the vineyard.
Yeah, that's right. It's great to be out in the weather, watch the clouds roll through, get a few raindrops on you. It doesn't hurt you. We're not going to melt, as my old foreman used to say. And it's just like you said, playing in mud puddles. It's still the kid in us.
Yes. And if the kid in you is interested in training for a career in the wine industry, visit Napa Valley College online at napavalley.edu. Then search under Academics for Technical Division, and that will have a link for Viticulture and Winery Technology. Thanks to Molly Hodgins and Daniel Barron for their time. And thank you for listening. You can find my past interviews at onthewineroad.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at JDWineRoad, and you can find my posts on Facebook at On the Wine Road. Music on today's show was provided by FirstCom and my old pal Mike Coleman. Today's show was written, recorded, and produced by me, Jeff Davis. Yes, I'm a one-man operation over here, but I always enjoy your company on the Wine Road. I'll catch you next time.